I'm sorry. He has completed his PhD in chemistry from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, in 2006. Then he moved to National Institute of Materials, Japan, for 3 years, that is during 2006 to 2009. After having 3 years of experience as a postdoctoral research, he moved to Tohoku University, Sendai, Japan, as JSPS Research Fellow. That was during 2010 to 2012. From April 2012, he joined at CSIR Central Electrochemical Research Institute, Karaikudi. Currently, he is working as senior scientist in Electrochemical Power Source Division. His research is focused on development of advanced material for energy conversion, and storage. He has published around 140 research articles in reputed international journals, 6 book chapters, 145 plus conference presentations, and 2 patents in his credit. He has H index of 36 and total citation of 5,443 as of May 2020. He has guided 3 PhD students, 4 students are in progress, and several MSc and MTech project students. So I present you Dr. M. Satish to the audience. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pawan. Can you hear me, right?
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for the opportunity. I also thank the entire organizing team for the opportunity to share some of our research experience with you all. First of all, I'm sure that actually you might be heard from Dr. Palani Balaya and even my colleague Dr. Guldeep Singh about batteries. So I slightly changed after seeing the speakers list. I slightly changed my slides towards other area. Of course, I will be touching this role of nanomaterials in electrochemical energy storage devices. So this is our main campus, which is in Karaikudi. This comes under CSIR. CSIR, I hope you all are aware that the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, under the umbrella of CSIR, there are 37 laboratories. Each lab is meant for this, for some specific application. I'm sorry. So this is our main campus view. You could see the very old building, which was founded in 1947.
Sir, your slides are not moving, sir. Once check it, sir, please.
Oh, okay. So can you see now, right?
Yeah, we can see, sir. You can just move to some slides and we will see how the transition is.
Now it's moving?
It is okay. Yeah, it is moving. Everything is fine.
Okay. So this is a view of our institute. The very first slide you could see, this is the main campus. So I think I need not to explain more about what is CSIR and what is Central Electrochemical Research Institute. So as you see from the name itself, you could see we were mainly working on various aspects of electrochemistry. I hope Dr. Guldeep also briefed. So in addition to our main campus, we have 2 more campus. One is in Chennai. They are mainly focusing on the lithium-ion fabrication and the fuel cell activities. So the other one is very near to Rameshwaram. This is a place called Mandapam, where we are having a remote center for monitoring the corrosion in the sea environment. So these are the various divisions. For example, the first division deals with the corrosion and material production. The other one is electrochemical power source. The third one is plating and metal finishing. And that other one is electrochemical power process engineering. And we do have electro-organic and materials electrochemistry. And finally, electronics and electrocatalysis. But if you see commonly here, we are touching both materials engineering as well as the structural engineering and physics, chemistry, or even the process engineering, and also two fundamentals. So we cover entire aspects of electrochemistry rather than we call it as a physics lab or chemistry lab. Wherever the electrochemistry involves, whether it may be mining or metal recovery or metal finishing, wherever the electrochemistry involves, we'll cover the entire spectrum of electrochemistry. So we are not limited to physics or chemistry or materials. So that is interesting aspects of our laboratory. So this is the other slide is for the information to the faculties or their friends or maybe students. They can do their final year project work to CSI or SICRI, like MSc, MPhil, or ME or MTech. Some selected areas, particularly as I told you, structural engineering or environmental engineering, chemical engineering or materials or physics, which are related to electrochemistry. They can do their final year projects. Even the PhD students can also stay for some time and then they can do. Of course, there is some application process. They have to apply through the proper channel. That means through the head of the department to us, and then we'll select based on the marks. And these candidates are allowed to do their experiments after the selection process. For more details, you can go to this website www.sicri.res.in, where you could see there is academic tabs. Under this, there is a guidelines for the dissertation. Basically, we'll accept application twice in a year. One is in the month of March for the summer vacation, and then the other one will be in November for the winter vacation. Unfortunately, as you know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's very difficult to accept students in this present scenario. I'm sure maybe this November or from next year onwards, things will, situation will be better and things will go as normal. So maybe this information will be useful for some of your friends. So coming to my group, so we are working on various aspects of materials. I can say rather than the electrochemistry, I can say it's a material chemist. So we start with 2D layered inorganic materials or metal oxides. We use a specific techniques called supercritical fluid processing for the exfoliation of 2D materials, also for the synthesis of metal oxides. We do use liquid-liquid interfacial material synthesis for the self-assembly of Fullerene nanostructures. We do work on metal oxides or sulfides synthesis, some new material, whether it's an morphology or size or shape. We do use on these things for solid state battery. Solid state battery and photocatalysis. So the other part, we develop carbon-based materials for energy storage applications. So mainly for supercapacitors. I hope the previous speakers might be put some light on supercapacitors, or at least what is supercapacitors. So in this particular talk, I will be focusing more on supercapacitors rather than the batteries, since I'm sure that batteries you people are familiar, and then I'm sure that the other upcoming speakers also will be more elaborately going to talk on batteries or batteries materials. So I limit with only few slides. So I'm sure you all agree with me that renewable energies is a future. People are investing huge amount of money as well as the time and effort. Even the government is putting a lot of effort to develop various kind of renewable energy sources, starting from solar photovoltaics or solar thermal power or wind energy, hydropower or biomass, ocean to energy, waste to energy. I just put only few promising techniques, but of course it's not limited to all renewable energy sources. But some of these things we are enjoying it like anything. For example, wind energy and hydropower and biomass, we are this is not new for us. We are enjoying it for last several few decades. But unfortunately, this wind energy or hydropower, there are only limited options. Particularly if you go for hydropower, there is only limited opportunities. There is no possibilities to increase the facility further since we have only limited lot of water reservoirs. So the maintaining the particular source itself is a very difficult challenge in coming days. Only thing is we can improve the efficiency of that hydropower methodologies so that we can increase the overall efficiency. But other than that, the wind energy is also we are using it, but unfortunately, this is not very stable system. So stable in the sense yearly only few months we can have some windy season. Even the windy day, even the morning session will be different from the evening session. So there is no constant production of electricity, I can say. The biomass and ocean energy or waste energy is also contributing to a certain extent, but unfortunately, this is very limited scope for this thing to meet all our future requirement. So solar power is one of the promising techniques. Actually, I have some data, but I don't want to go into the details. So this will unnecessarily will take you in different direction. But I can say you that solar-based electricity production is a promising. So that
okay, ma. Reciprocity theorem.
I'm sorry.
There is some
இது
disturbance.
அது முடிஞ்சிச்சுல அதுல ப்ராப்ளம்
Madam,
போட்டோம்ல
I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay, sir, I'll take care of this. I'm at it. You continue, sir.
Yeah, sure. So the solar-based systems are very promising and emerging. That's why the government is also giving a lot of initiation and then subsidizing. At present, the solar electricity cost may be twice the cost of the conventional cost. But I'm sure and after 3-4 years later, you could see the conventional electricity charges are much higher than the solar electricity charges. So in that scenario, you need electrical energy storage devices. Since sun is not available in the night time, you should store the energy using this and either one of the devices. So where this the electrical energy storage devices, the nanomaterials plays a huge role. I'm sure all of you are aware of nanomaterials, since nanomaterials are not new for us. Since almost last 2 or 3 decades, we are dealing with nanomaterials in left and right. So this is not new, for at least for some people who are not aware of it. I just put 1 or 2 slides on this. So they are 10 power minus 9 are the 1 billionth of in size. So the materials with the dimensions and the tolerances in the range of 100 nanometer to 0.1 nanometers are generally called as nanomaterials. Please kindly make it sure that the people are sometimes, even my students, sometimes they'll call, sir, this is only a 500 nanometer particle. So we call it as a nanoparticles. That is not true. Even this 500 nanometer is not a real factor. It varies with materials to materials. So 100 nanometer, earlier it was only 50 nanometers. Now they increased to up to 100 nanometers. So anything above 100 nanometers may not be called as a nanoparticles. Okay. So even 1 micron size, you can call it as a 100,000 nanometer size particle. Okay. That is not it. You can call it, but the properties are not, may not be equivalent to the nanoparticles which we are talking about.
Hello.
These
Satish
days,
sir.
any materials can be prepared in just starting from metals or ceramics, polymeric materials, or composite materials, and prepared in nano size. Hello.
Yes, sir. There was some disturbance with your voice earlier. Now it is fine. You can continue, sir.
I'm sorry, maybe my internet may not be very stable. That may be the reason.
Yeah, you can continue, sir. This it is fine now.
Okay, okay.
I will enable the transcript so that the people can read out what you're saying. And
Okay.
if any participants doesn't want to see the transcript, it is possible for him to disable from his end.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally the 1 nanometer in the sense is 3 to 5 atoms is aligned in a row. So the human hair is a 5 orders magnitude larger than the nanometers. So as I told you earlier, not just because of having less than 100 nanometer or less than 50 nanometers, we cannot call it as a nanoparticles. Okay, so there should be some behavior change or the properties change. So that is expected for the particles. So that's then only you can call it as a nanoparticle. Otherwise, size is not size alone does not matter. Okay. So, for example, expecting different behavior in electrons in their transport. For example, for electronic devices, and the correlation in the case of optoelectronic devices from the conventional bulk materials. So, for example, the electrons in the semiconductor can easily controllable and accessible, but you cannot change the inherent properties or performance. Whereas the electrons in atomic systems, you can easily control the inherent performance, but unfortunately, you cannot control the accessibility. But in the case of semiconductor quantum dot materials, the advantage of both can be done because of this nanoparticles or the nano behavior. So this is what just a visible assumption to see you how this nanoparticle looks like. So this is a baseball of this size. If you go for the nanomaterials, if 1 nanometer or 10 nanometer, you could see this one glucose molecule or water molecule is having a 0.1 nanometer or 1 nanometer or 10 nanometers. So not only as properties, why the properties is changes is mainly depends upon the number of particles on the surfaces. For example, if you take this one, the one shell, it has 13 atoms. Out of 13 atoms, 92% of surface is exposed to the atmosphere. Okay, so this not only increase the surface area. In addition to this, the more exposure of atoms into the for the reactivity. So more number of atoms on the surface, the more number of dangling bands. So because of this dangling bonds, the activities also will be different. When you increase the cell thickness, for example, instead of 13 atoms to 55 atoms or 147 atoms or 309 atoms, you could see the number of atoms on the surface is also coming down. The percentage, basically the percentage is coming down. So this clearly says that when you move towards more and more particles assembly, you are moving towards the bulk nature. So because of this, you could see there is a lot of change in the parameters. Here I just putting only the melting point for your assumption. You could see this 10 nanometer particles and 7 nanometer particles. There won't be much change in the melting point. Okay, of the same material. Even I am talking about the nanometer, 10 nanometer or 7 nanometer. Even you could see up to 5 nanometer size, there was not much change in the melting point of this particular material. When coming below 5 to 1 nanometer, you could see there is a drastic change in the melting point of the material. So this clearly shows here the size alone doesn't matter. When the properties are changing, then only we can call it as a nanoparticle behavior. So this is again to explain you or to see you visibly how this nanoparticle increases the surface area. You could see the 4 centimeter cube. If you see the surface is 96 centimeters squared, if you calculate it. The same cube I cut into 8 cubes. of each 2 centimeter. Then you could see the surface area increases to 192 centimeters square. This is just from 4 centimeter to 2 centimeter. If I cut this into few nanometers, so for example, I can see here, this is a 1 centimeter particle. I will cut into this very small nanoparticles. Then you could see this is this entire thing is a nanoparticle. Then the surface area is highly increased, or I can see this drastically increased. So this is what exactly people are doing it in graphene. So for example, graphene is a layered structure, layered graph. The sheets are arranged in this way. Unfortunately, there is no chemical bonding between the two sheets. The two sheets are attracted by a weak van der Waals forces. So once if you overcome the van der Waals forces, then you could be able to go for this kind of individual sheets. Of course, there are a lot of issues on this. It's maybe easy to explain, but it is not easy to prepare it. It's not only that when you reduce the particle size, there is a band gap changes also occurs. For the same material, I can tune the band gap by changing the size of the particle, particularly the semiconductors. I can play this like anything. So because of this, the properties can be tuned. So now we will see how these nanoparticles are playing a major role in the energy storage devices. Okay, so this is one. I gave one more example like gold. I can tune the color from different color, not like only limited to yellow. I can make it a rose or pink or green or greenish. All these colors I can tune by simply changing the size of the nanoparticles. So now we'll see how these nanoparticles are playing a major role on these electrical energy storage devices. So I'm sure you are familiar with batteries. I hope you also heard about fuel cells and then capacitors. So this particular plot is called Raghun plot. They will plot energy density versus a power density. So you can ask me if all of these devices are stores electrical energy, why we need different devices? What is the purpose of having these variety of devices rather than one particular device? So that's what this Raghun plot explains. For example, the energy density in the sense, how much amount of energy I can store in my device or a system. Okay. So in such a case, if you see the batteries, fuel cells can store huge amount of energy. Use the fuel cells, since the fuel cell is not a energy storage device, it's a energy conversion device. So generally speaking, you should not bring this fuel cell into this picture. But unfortunately, since people are using it for the reference to compare with batteries and our other electrochemical energy storage devices. So if you take the batteries or fuel cells, the energy density is very high. That in the sense, I can store huge amount of energy. But if you see the power density means how fast I can charge my device or how fast I can discharge my device. So here I told you that the energy density of my batteries are very high, but the power densities are very poor. In the sense, in my batteries, I can store huge amount of energy, but I can store the energy very slowly, or I can take energy only very slow manner. I cannot take all the energy immediately from my batteries. So that's what many people may be aware of it. When you have an inverter at your house, when you want to make it use for your mixie or grinder for 1 or 2 seconds or maybe a few seconds, you cannot run because the energy requirement for your mixie or grinder is much higher. So though your batteries have huge amount of energy which can run your mixie or grinder for more than 10 or 20 minutes, you cannot use it for even for a few seconds. So because the power density requirement is very higher, so we cannot try. If you try to take more energy from your batteries, your battery will get failure. So that is why your batteries are takes huge time for charging, at the same time for discharging. Even if you can take your mobile phone batteries, it takes at least minimum 4 to 5 hours for 100% charging. But once if you charge it, you can use it for 2 or 3 days also. It depends on your usage. Okay. Whereas coming to the capacitors or supercapacitors, I will explain you what is capacitors or supercapacitors. I'm sure that you might be seen capacitors in conventional electronics circuit boards. There may be some small balls, black color balls. You might be seen that if you see, they put 20 microfarad, like that, microfarad. So that is called capacitors. Supercapacitor, in the sense, the energy storage, that means the energy density is much higher than what you can store in your conventional capacitors. Supercapacitor stores 1000 farad or 3000 farad. In the sense, you could see 10 power minus 6, that is microfarad, to 10 power 3 times, that's 1000 farad. So almost I increase the energy density of my capacitor 10 power 9 times. So that is why it is called supercapacitors. So not only supercapacitor, people also call it as a micro supercapacitors or ultra capacitors or boost capacitors. There are different commercial names for the supercapacitors. As I told you earlier, the power density means how fast I can charge, how fast I can discharge. So this high power density reflects my supercapacitors can be stored charged very quickly. At the same time, I can discharge my device very quickly. But unfortunately, if you see the power density, the energy density of the supercapacitors are still lower than, or maybe I can say 100 times lower or 1000 times lower than the conventional batteries. But still there are some applications or promising applications for the supercapacitors. I will explain you what are the applications in the coming slides. So before going into the supercapacitors, I will take only few slides to explain you about the batteries. I will not take much time since you are already familiar with your batteries materials. So I don't want to take much time on this. Batteries, there are different kind of batteries. The basic difference is the primary batteries and secondary batteries, right? The primary batteries is a disposable. You can, that is a one-time usage. After the use, you have to simply throw it. Whereas the rechargeable batteries are, you can use several cycles, like charging, including your lithium-ion batteries comes under lithium iron phosphate, used as a positive material, and then this graphite are used as a negative material. The lithium-ion battery was slightly lower energy density than the lithium metal batteries, but it is much safer. Okay. So since the lithium is, as you know, this is a lithium and sodium are comes under similar category. So if it is exposed to air or moisture, then it will catch fire. So whereas the lithium ion batteries are much safer when compared to lithium metal batteries. So here you could see this is, if you compare with the power, there's 160% greater than the nickel metal hydride batteries and 220 times greater than the nickel cadmium batteries. So these are the batteries which we are using generally for our small batteries, which we are using for our torch light or all these small applications like toys, all these things we are using it. In addition to this, we have a high voltage for this lithium ion batteries when compared to other batteries. Yes. Also is the long shelf life. Shelf life means if I'm manufacturing a batteries, I just simply keep it on my storage. Then there may be a degradation of energy. So that is very much lower for the lithium ion batteries. Even that's why you could able to buy your mobile phone batteries, which was manufactured maybe a year before also with lithium ion batteries. Even if you see that maybe some 60 to 70% charges will be retained. So per monthly only maybe 5% of discharge will happen. Whereas if you compare to if you compare with nickel metal hydride and nickel cadmium batteries, which are 10% and 20% respectively. So I'm sure that you might be seeing this kind of varieties of lithium-ion batteries, starting from your mobile phone and then your laptop as well as your cameras, which has lithium-ion batteries these days. So I will explain you how it works and why it fails and what are the materials can be used. So for example, graphite is used in the one side. As I told you, graphite is a layered materials like this. I just put some space between these. This space between these two sheets is 0.33 nanometers. That's called van der Waals gap. So the theoretical capacity of this graphite is 372 milliampere hour per gram. Okay. Whereas your generally the cathode material has much lower, maybe half of this 150 or 160 milliampere hour per gram. So as of now, the cathode materials are this anode materials have not much issues since the graphite is safe, and then also this energy density is much higher than what is your cathode materials. So generally not much issue with the anode materials. So that's why people are more focusing on this cathode materials. Of course, there are some limited atoms on anode materials also. But relatively, I can say this cathode materials having large, there needs lot of attention. So if you see, these are the lithium ions. So this is a lithium cobalt oxide, and then these green balls are lithium. So once this electron goes, if you are charging through external circuit, this battery, so these electrons are forcefully removed from this crystal and then go through like this to here. So once the lithium goes, the lithium in the crystal will come as a lithium plus, and then lithium plus will be surrounded by the electrolyte ions, and then move towards this, where this electron comes and then get into the anode cloud. So this graphene sheet accepts these electrons. So once this become negative charge, this lithium ion will be get inserted here. This process is called intercalation. So it will slowly get intercalated until you could remove all the lithium ions from this side to this side. So that means you are charged the batteries 100%. So this is a charging process. I use some external force. That's why by connecting to external electricity, I can forcefully remove these electrons and then do this job. Once this has been done, I can remove this external electricity input, and then I can connect with my device, either mobile phone or laptop. So the electron will readily wants to go to from the anode to cathode through this external circuit. On the way, it will do its job, and then it will come back here. Once the electron goes here, again this lithium will be removed from this de-intercalated, and then it will come back to the cathode side and then get combined with this. So basically, if you see, the lithium plus is settling between this anode and cathodes via the electrolyte. The electron is settling between the cathode and anode via the external electricity or external electric connection. Okay. So here, though the process looks very simple and then it's repeatable. In such a case, your batteries should not get failed. It should work as long as you use it. But unfortunately, that is not happening. So I will explain you what are the process. So these are the requirements like large reversible capacity and desirable charge profile, long cycle and calendar life.
Maximum, when you will have the maximum.
Easy processing and compatibility with the electrolyte, and most importantly, it should be very safe, and it should be low cost also. So I will explain this slide in a very simple manner, why it fails, and then why nanomaterials, that too, some selected materials only could be used as cathode materials. Though we have several materials, why can't use all the materials as cathode materials? As I told you here, in the case of lithium ion batteries, there is no lithium metal at all. Okay, the lithium is the lithium settling between anode and cathode comes from the lithium containing compound. So you cannot use all the compounds as a cathode materials. You need a lithium containing compound. Okay, so that is the first preference. So if you see, still there are a lot of lithium containing compounds, lithium complex or lithium metal containing metal oxides or spinels or inverse spinels, all these things are available. The second important thing is it should be crystalline. Crystalline in the sense, in very vague, I can explain the sitting place of each atoms are fixed. Okay, that means this is a lithium place, these are the lithium place. So this is like our cobalt, and then the other one is like these white atoms are your oxygen. So this one is your cobalt, this is a lithium ions in the crystal lattice. So even if you remove all the lithiums, for example, I'm forcefully moving this lithium. I didn't show you the external circuit here, okay, for simplicity. If I connect it into batteries, I will start charging it. That means basically I am removing this lithium. If I remove all the lithium ions, still this crystal system has to be stable. That is a third important point. One is you should have a lithium containing compound. Second one is that compound should have a highly crystalline. Third important thing is, even if you remove the lithium ions, this crystal has to be stable. Then only you can use this material as an electrode materials. For example, this is a crystalline material which has a lithium ion. If I remove all the lithium and then this structure collapse, then you cannot discharge this lithium ion. This lithium ion cannot come and occupy its original place. Okay. Third important thing is, when this lithium ion goes and when it's discharging it, it will come back from your graphite to here, and it has to go and occupy its original seats. So basically, where it goes wrong is, for example, if I assume that I have 100 lithium ions in this crystal, I'm charging it, I'm moving all these 100 lithium ions from here to your graphite side, that is anode side. When discharging it, some of this lithium ion will go on to get strongly bounded with the graphite structure. So there may be some kind of defects in the crystal system or the graphite morphology. So it will strongly bound. So it is not ready to come back. For example, after 100 lithium ions, only 99 will come out. 1 or 2 will get strongly bounded with the graphite. Even if this 98 or 99 comes, 1 or 2 will go and occupy in the other places. Like you may have some empty tetrahedral voids or octahedral voids in the crystals. So this will go and occupy in some wrong place or some interstitial position. Since the lithium ion is so small, it may go and occupy in some other places. So because of this, next cycle we may have only 95 or 96 lithium ions. So this process repeating, when you repeat it, each cycle you may lose few lithium ions. So for, originally you will have 100. After certain cycles, like maybe 100 cycles or 200 cycles, you could see there may be only half of the lithium ions you may have. So that's why when you buy a brand new lithium ion batteries, it may support your application for 1 or 2 days also. For example, if I make 100% charge, I can use it for more than 1 day. But when the time goes, after 1 year or 2 years later, you could see your batteries will not be stable. Even if you charge it, it shows it's 100% charge. So the hardly maybe half of the lithium ions are available for settling. The battery will get discharged within half day or maybe less than half day. So you eventually you have to remove your batteries. So that is what the process is taking place. So I'm explaining you in a very crude manner. Okay. So of course, there are some other process also taking place. Those who are working in this area, they may be familiar with this. For example, the lithium comes here, it will forms kind of plating over this material. So that is called that lithium metalling process. So all these process are makes the batteries worst. Or sometimes this also damage your entire batteries. Also, sometimes there may be, since your anode and cathode have been separated with a very small separator, very thin separator. Okay, so because of this formation of dendrites over these materials, it will become sharp, and then this will puncture the anode, the membrane, and then the anode and cathode will get combined. Okay, so there are so many other processes. I just want to explain you in a very simple manner. So when you're coming for the choice of the materials, you could see the primary choice is lithium containing materials. As I told you earlier, since we are not using any other lithium source, since if you use graphite, obviously your cathode materials should be a lithium containing compound. So for example, your graphite is here. If you see the bottom here, so this is a potential versus lithium plus. For example, this potential of this graphite is maybe 0.01 or 0.001 versus lithium plus. So now I can select any material this area. For example, if I take M1O2, this voltage is 3. Now the battery potential is, or the voltage is 3 minus 0.001. That means 2.009, or sorry, 2.999, right? For example, if I select this material, lithium manganese metal oxide, this voltage is 4. Now if I can take the difference is 3.999. So now the voltage I can increase from 3 to 4 volt. So for example, instead of that, if I take some other materials like tin oxide, so its potential is very close to 0.8 or 0.9. If I take MnO2 as a cathode, now the difference is 3 minus 0.9. Only the voltage is 2.1 is my device voltage. So simply you can take these two difference between these two materials, then that will become a device voltage. So there are people are now they are changing these combinations like nickel, cobalt, aluminum, or manganese. They will use it. They will use the combination 0.3, 0.3, 0.3, and then they will change this one. Even the 0.1 variation is also changes the properties of the materials in a very great manner. I'm sure that the previous speakers might be spoke with this, or the upcoming speaker also will talk about this in detail. So I don't want to go further on this. Of course, there are a lot of issues in this area. For example, stored energy per mass or volume has to be increased. The power of this device has to be increased. And then recharge time, obviously, if you increase the power density, then obviously this will also change. Of course, the lifetime and the cost has to be improved. At present, the battery's lifetime is maybe 150 to 200 or maybe 500 cycles you can use it. And also the safety and environmental sustainability of the materials which are used for the batteries has to be taken care. People are working on various aspects of these challenges. So now I'm coming to the supercapacitor part. Maybe I will spend more time on here. I'll explain you in more detail how the supercapacitor works and then why we need a supercapacitor in addition to your batteries. So as I told you here, the capacitors and supercapacitors comes here. We need some device somewhere here so that the energy density and power density is optimum. So that's why the battery people working in batteries are working this direction. Since their energy density of the batteries are almost higher, without sacrificing the energy density, they are trying to improve the power density of the batteries. Similarly, people working in capacitors or supercapacitors, without compromising the power, they are trying to increase the energy density of the supercapacitors. So it doesn't matter whether it's a supercapacitor here or a batteries here. So at present, people are now combining batteries and supercapacitors so that we'll end up with some hybrid device somewhere here so that we can meet all our requirements. Those who are not still familiar with this power density and energy density, they can simply go through these images by seeing these images, you can also understand what is the difference between your capacitors or supercapacitors or batteries. So see, both are running race, right? So there is no doubt about it. But this is a 100-meter race, and then this is a marathon race. So both needs different skill. Okay, here the distance is very short. That the duration is so important. So, for example, even milliseconds or microseconds you may lose. Okay, or you may win it in the race. Whereas here the distance is too high. Here maybe 100 meters or 200 meters. Here it may be a 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers, or sometimes it may be a 50 kilometers also. Here the speed is important, but it's not so important. You need the stamina to run all the 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers. Here, if you try to run too much of speed, then you cannot cover entire distance. Similarly, here everybody can cover this 100 meters or 200 meters, but the time is so important. Exactly, the batteries and supercapacitors are similar. The supercapacitors can run fast, but unfortunately it cannot run for long distance. Batteries can slowly, it can run, but it cannot run very fast. Or the other simple example is like this. For example, this cup of water, you may have some 100 ml or 200 ml of water in this. You can pour it, or you can, if you want to fill it also, you can simply put it on a drum, immediately you can fill it. But unfortunately, the volume is less. The energy density is less, but the rate of charging and discharging, that is make it empty and fill it, is very high. So the power density is very high. Whereas here maybe 20 liters or 30 liters, the amount of energy stored in the system is very high, but here this is the limitation. For charging, that means for filling or make it empty, you have to wait for a certain time. So this is what exactly happening between your batteries and supercapacitors. Why it is both parameters are important? Since people are talking about electric vehicle, either it may be a fuel cell powered car or battery powered car. For example, if I'm successful with my battery powered vehicle, if I say, for example, lithium ion battery powered vehicle, I can go for 400 kilometers or 500 kilometers if I charge my battery 100 times, 100%, and then I can start. But unfortunately, I cannot go more than 20 or 30 kilometers per hour speed. If I try to go for 60, 70 kilometers per hour, kilometers per hour, then obviously I have to take more energy from my battery. Though my batteries have enough energy, but the rate of discharging of my batteries is limited. Because of this, we cannot take the energy. So obviously you cannot use the car. Whereas if you have the car with completely with the supercapacitor, I can go even 200 kilometers or 300 kilometers per hour speed, but I cannot go more than 10 kilometers. After 10 kilometers, I have to charge my device again. Or the one of the advantages in supercapacitors are, like for charging also you need very minimum time, like 30 seconds or less than a minute is sufficient for charging your supercapacitors. Or some of the supercapacitors needs only 10 seconds or 5 seconds. In such a case, you cannot use the car, since every 10 kilometers you cannot find out a charging station, though the time is only 10 seconds or 30 seconds, right? So that is the problem. So we need at least some device where you can travel at least 400 kilometers or 500 kilometers per charge. At the same time, I should go minimum 70 to 80 kilometers per hour speed. I need not to go to 200 kilometers hour per speed, since none of the roads will support to us. At least 70 to 80 kilometers per hour speed is very essential if I want to use that particular car, right? So that is the thing now people are using it. So this is simple comparison of these parameters what we have discussed so far, the capacitors or supercapacitors and batteries. If you see the charge discharge time, it needs some picoseconds to milliseconds when compared to supercapacitors, since the supercapacitors are 10 power 9 times higher in energy when compared to supercapacitors. So obviously it needs more time for charging. but still if you see the charging time is milliseconds to some minutes. Whereas in the batteries, it is in hours. Coming to life, that is more important. This is one of the other important parameters is like in the capacitors are much stable. In the sense 10 power 8 cycles. For example, if you buy it one conventional capacitors, that's almost stable for entire of your lifetime. Okay, that is the kind of one-time investment. When compared to supercapacitors, there is some small sacrifice, but still, if you see at least it's a 10 to 15 years, these supercapacitors will support you. Unless otherwise you make physically any damage to the system, it will be very stable. Whereas batteries, if you are lucky, you can have 1500 cycles, and then or otherwise it will be 150 cycles. That's why obviously you have to change your mobile phone after 3 years because of your batteries alone. Okay, so most of the cost of your batteries goes for your phones goes for your batteries only, not the other systems. So if you see the weight, the supercapacitors are very small in weight. For example, there are 1 or 2 grams, whereas your batteries are in kilograms. If you see the energy density and power density, as I told you, the energy power density is much higher for supercapacitors compared to batteries. And compared to energy density, batteries are much higher than the capacitors and supercapacitors. So now I will explain you more detail about how the supercapacitors works, why this energy density is very high, and how we could able to increase the energy density since the power density is already high. So unlike your batteries, here the same material can be used as your anode and cathode, or positive and negative terminal. Okay, so that's why I put 2 yellow part. The same material can be used in your, here I put activated carbon. It's not limited to only activated carbon. Any material can be used. That should be some conductive. So that is a primary requirement. For example, the same material can be used as anode and cathode. The in between is have a electrolyte, in the sense the filter paper, simple filter paper soaked with some electrolytes, sodium chloride solution or potassium chloride solution or sulfuric acid solution can do this job. So you can assume there is another one electrode, another electrode. Both electrodes are separated by a simple tissue paper, which is soaked with some electrolyte. So this is ideal condition when I'm not charging the device. If I connect this device to external circuit, I move some electron from top to bottom through external circuit, as like in batteries. So the electrons comes through this. So now this become negative charge. Obviously, this top electrode will become positive charge. So because of this negative and positive charge, the ions, for example, if I take sodium chloride ion in the previous slide, where it will, the sodium ion is surrounded by chloride ion is surrounded by the sodium ions. The positive and negative charges are uniformly distributed. Now, because of this polarization of negative and positive and negative charges in the electrode surface, obviously this positive ions will move to this negative surface and negative ions move into the positive surface. But you could see still these ions are within the electrolyte. It is not going to the electrodes, okay? But still it is in the electrode-electrolyte interface. Only these charges are separated, not removed, okay? So now if I start using my system, now I 100% I charge. If I charge using this some device, mobile phone, or I'm putting some LEDs, all these things, the electron move through this external circuit, and then this glow LED or use your electronic circuit, and then this go back here. Once this all this electron goes here, so again this there won't be any negative charge and any positive charge. So if once the charges on these electrodes are disappeared, these ions also get attracted each other, then it will go back like this. So here if you see, I did not make any new bonding, or I did not remove any chemical changes to the materials or the electrolyte. Because of this system is reversible n number of times. Okay. So unless otherwise you physically break the system, it will not get failure. So that is why your conventional capacitors has endless lifetime, I can say. Okay, unless otherwise you do some physical damage. So this is called electrochemical double layer capacitors. For example, since this forms layers, this charges are the electrode electrolyte interface. This is another electrode electrolyte interface. So we call it as a double layer. So this is called electrochemical double layer capacitors. Here, the energy density is depends upon how much charges I can separate. How much, for example, here I maybe separated 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14 ions. Okay, if I could able to separate instead of 14,000 ions, then my energy density will be higher. Instead of the 100 ions or 1000 ions, if I can able to separate 1 lakh ions, then obviously my energy density is increases. So how I can separate the ions? If I increase the surface area, that means the electrolyte interface area, then I can able to separate more amount of ions from the electrolyte. So basically I need a high surface area material. So that's why this your nanomaterials plays a major role. Nanomaterials plays a major role since it has a high surface area. So if I can increase high surface area more and more, I can also separate charges also more and more. So this obviously will help us to increase the energy density of the system. Most of the systems only carbon materials are used, activated carbon materials, since everybody knows the surface area of this carbon can be increased to even more than 2000 meters square per gram. In addition to the surface area, since we are using this as a electrode, this material should have the minimum conductivity. Conductivity need not to be as like metal. Okay. So here we need some minimum conductivity. In the conventional capacitors, which you are using in your electronic circuit board, almost a similar concept, but this carbon materials are replaced with the metallic plates, where the metallic plates are separated by a dielectric medium. So the metallic plates are very heavy. Also, the surface area is limited. For example, even if we take 1 centimeter squared aluminum foil, this weight is much higher than what I can have the similar surface area within my activated carbon material. Okay, for even 1 gram of carbon, I can go more maximum of 2000 meters squared per gram. So that much is not possible with metallic plates. So that's why this energy density of the supercapacitors are 10 power 9 times increase when compared to the conventional capacitors. So these capacitors are basically classified into two types. One is electrochemical double layer capacitors. That was we have seen in the previous slides. So where only charges are separated, and then I can increase the energy density by having high surface area carbon. This is a highly reversible and stable system. Unfortunately, I cannot keep on increasing the surface area beyond certain limit. So if you try to increase the surface area, there is a compromise in the conductivity. So because of this, the activity goes down. But still people are interested to increase the energy density of the supercapacitors. So they invented pseudo capacitors or redox capacitors, where the fast redox and reversible reaction takes place at the surface or the near surface of the material. For example, if I take ruthenium oxide or manganese oxide, only few nanometer surface atoms are goes for redox reaction. As like my batteries, here the oxidation reduction reaction takes place, but that is takes place only on the surface. That should take place in a fraction of seconds. Okay, so it is called pseudo capacitors. It's not as capacitors; it's called pseudo capacitors. Even this can be applicable for some conductive polymers also, like polypyrrole, polyaniline, polythiophene are well known for this. Very recently, this area has been explored to other area as like other research areas. As I told you earlier, we can see electrochemical double layer capacitors, that is basically by activated carbon. The recent new carbons like carbon nanotubes, graphene, or multi-wall carbon nanotubes, or single-wall carbon nanotubes can be used to the EDLC. So they have been improved the performance of the EDLC in greater extent. Similarly, redox capacitors, metal oxides, or conductive polymers have been used. So here, as like batteries, people are combining these EDLC materials and redox materials. So where we can have some composites hybrid, both we have EDLC and redox capacitors. So that could be combined. Or asymmetric hybrid, that means as like batteries, your anode material is different, your cathode material is different, or the positive material is different, negative material is different, so that you can have a battery like combination, but it is not batteries. Okay, so that is the difference. The other side is the battery hybrid. Here one of the battery material itself is used as either anode or cathode, so that the chemistry is different. So there are some changes in this area, so that's why the hybrid capacitors comes. As I told you earlier, they are trying to combine both the advantage of batteries as well as the supercapacitors. I will explain you what is the current applications of supercapacitors. So this is a conventional capacitors you might be seen that they have used in your electronic circuits. If you see, there may be a one less than 1 centimeter thickness, or maybe a height or radius. Whereas here I am talking about boost capacitors or ultra capacitors, which are used in Airbus. For example, this Airbus 380 has 8 doors. In case of any emergency landing, this all the doors has to be opened immediately. So your batteries cannot support to open all the doors, since you have to drain huge amount of electricity from the storage device. So your battery cannot be used. So in such cases, your supercapacitors can be used. In addition to this, I'm sure many people come across with a regenerative braking system or intelligent braking system in the hybrid cars. So that means whenever you apply a brake, you are wasting your mechanical energy. So instead of that, that mechanical energy can be converted into electrical energy. Then that could be stored in your batteries. But unfortunately, when you apply a brake in a fraction of a second, you produce huge amount of electricity. That electricity cannot be immediately stored in your batteries. Since as I told you earlier, batteries has some limitation. It cannot accept charges very quickly. It needs time to take all the charges. Since you are producing electricity in a fraction of a second, it cannot be stored effectively on your batteries. So where this electricity will be put it on your supercapacitors, since a supercapacitor's energy storage capacity is much higher than what you could able to make electricity out of your regenerative braking system at a time. So immediately it is stored in your supercapacitors, and then slowly this energy can be put on your batteries, or it can be used when you raise the accelerator. So that's why your supercapacitors are used in your regenerative braking system or intelligent braking system in all your hybrid cars. It's not only that, in China and all, people are having buses also. This completely run with supercapacitors. So these all are city buses where you could have this kind of charging facilities in all the bus stops. So in cities, you can have the bus stops every 4 kilometers or 5 kilometers. So once the charge your bus, your supercapacitors, buses are ready to travel 8 to 7 kilometers. So by the time you will get a next bus stop. So when the bus goes and stop on the bus stop, it takes maybe 1 or 2 minutes to the passengers to come out, and then new passengers goes in, right? So that will take maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute. So that time is much sufficient for your supercapacitor to get charged. So again, these buses are ready to go for another 7 or 8 kilometers. So I think unfortunately my video is not running in this computer. Maybe if time permits, I will show you the video. All these videos are available in the YouTube also. You could also Google it on supercapacitor bus. So obviously it will take you there. Most importantly, very recently, your Lamborghini, they have introduced one car called Lamborghini Sian. So that is completely run with only supercapacitors. I just show you some of the specifications. You could see this is they have 785 horsepower engine with the 8,500 RPM. It's completely made up of titanium walls. It can reach to 100 kilometers per hour speed within 2.8 seconds. Okay. So the total engine capacity is only 34 kilograms. And then this completely made up with the regenerative braking system and hybridization with the supercapacitor alone. So coming to the R&D aspects of supercapacitors, what we can do. Okay, as I told you earlier, there are three major things. One is the materials. For example, carbon-based materials or metal oxides or sulfides or phosphates also can be reported, or some kind of polymers have been used. And one is the material aspects, the other one is the electrolyte aspects. As like the batteries, I'm sure there is only limited choice for electrolytes. Of course, if you go for all solid state electrolytes, then there are a lot of opportunities. But lithium ion batteries, in the conventional batteries, I think most of the things get optimized. Here, this energy density of the supercapacitors is depends upon this equation. That is 1/2 CV squared. The C is the capacitance. The capacitance is depends upon the surface area of the material or structure of the material or morphology of the material or size of the material. So not only carbon, okay, any material. If you change whether it's a tubes or nano rods or sheets, can change the structure and surface area. So obviously that will influence the C. Also the conductivity, pore size, and what kind of functional groups on the surfaces plays a major role. Okay, the other important parameter is the voltage. Fortunately, here the supercapacitors can be used in aqueous electrolyte also. Whereas in your batteries, since we are using lithium-ion based materials, you need organic electrolyte. So this is a safety of the batteries are also always questionable. Whereas in the case of supercapacitors, you can use aqueous-based supercapacitor as well as non-aqueous supercapacitors. If you use aqueous-based supercapacitors, the V is the limiting factor. V is the voltage. Since if you apply more than 1.6 or 1.7, your water will get decomposed into hydrogen and oxygen, right? So though the theoretical voltage of water decomposition is 1.23 volt, due to over voltage, the hydrogen and oxygen evolution occurs only at 1.6 or 1.7 volt. Beyond that, the water may not be stable. So you need, if you want to go for more than 3 volt, you need some organic electrolyte as like your lithium ion batteries. So here the V is depends upon what kind of electrolyte you are using it and how it decomposes with the applied voltage. So there are two opportunities. One is the material aspects where you can change these parameters: surface area, carbon structure or morphology, conductivity, pore size, functional groups. By having this, you can alter the C. Also, you can work on the electrolyte part where you can influence on the V. Fortunately, if you change small changes in the even V, it may reflect more because this is a V squared, right? I will just explain you what we are doing it and what are the possibilities. For example, here this activated carbon, and then this is this small particles are called pseudo capacity materials. It may be some polymers, it may be some metal oxides. This can be combined. So this has been done maybe several years before, maybe a decade before. So this instead of activated carbon, they are using some carbon nanotubes. They decorated with some pseudo capacity materials, and then they have used it for supercapacitor application. Recently, graphene came into the R&D, which has very high surface area. More importantly, the conductivity of the graphene is much higher than any metal. So since the conductivity of the material is very high, if you have very high surface area as like 2630 meters square per gram, this may be the best material for supercapacitor application. Here you could see this is a theoretical view of how this graphene structure looks like. But unfortunately, graphene seeds are not stable in when you dry it. Maybe it may be stable in solution, but the moment if you dry it, it will get agglomerated or it may be restacked. So as I told you earlier, the gap between the two sheets is 0.33 nanometers. So we need some molecules in between this. So we call it as a spacer molecules. The spacer molecules may be kind of some metal oxide or conductive polymers, which are pseudo-capacitive in nature, so that it will not allow these two sheets to restack. At the same time, it will also contribute through the pseudo-capacitance. So once these two sheets are not restacked, the entire surface of the sheets can be used for the EDLC. That means electrochemical double layer capacitors. So both electrochemical double layer capacitors or pseudo-capacitance from the metal oxides or polymers can be achieved by having this kind of materials. More importantly, these graphene sheets are highly conductive. So even if your metal oxides or polymers have some issues with the conductivity, then that could be taken care by these conductive graphene sheets. So because of this, the entire system has high performance. Even if I use metal oxide alone, the conductivity, because of poor conductivity, I may have very less capacitance. Whereas if I have this combination of these two, obviously I have very good performance. So that's why people are working on it. So how uniformly you could able to decorate your sheets, and the graphene is a major R&D. People are working on various aspects. So here what we have done is we took graphene oxide, we put some metal nitrates and potassium hexocyanoferrous complex on this. We will form a metal hexocyanoferrate complex on this graphene sheets. When you put these graphene sheets on this strong KOH solution or potassium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide solution, so this will immediately, it will get decomposed into metal oxides. Not only metal oxide, crystalline metal oxide without any heat treatment. So that's why this process is very facile and is scalable for large scale preparation. More importantly, without any heat treatment, we can able to make a crystalline compound, also in nano size range. So also this process is very low cost process. Since it's only two-step process, you can end up with a crystalline metal oxide decoration on the graphene sheets. So because of this performance also very high. We have demonstrated this for several metal oxides, so manganese oxide, nickel oxide, cobalt oxide, copper oxide, and zinc oxide decorated graphene sheets. So some of you interested, maybe you can just get it. So this field is emerging like anything. For example, if you see in 2000s, maybe hardly one or maybe some few hundred papers published. Okay. When the year goes from 2000 to 2018, you could see this number of paper published in supercapacitors are drastically increasing. It's still increasing. This shows clearly what is the importance of supercapacitors. When the electric vehicles comes into the market, people are talking about electric vehicles. This importance of supercapacitors also goes up. So if you see the materials reported, so there are some zeolite, metal organic frameworks, some kind of waste metal oxide or conductive polymers or composites has been reported. Most of the reporters deals with the carbon materials. There are several reasons. One is the low cost and easy availability and highly conductive in nature. So that's why people are focusing on carbon-based materials for supercapacitors. Also the cost, actually I don't want to go into the slides, I just skip it. So as of now, the chemically activated carbons are much cheaper and easy for bulk production for supercapacitor application. That could be done by two steps. One is the carbonization followed by the activation. Carbonization is generally done at high temperature like 200 to 400 degrees Celsius in inert atmosphere. Whereas the chemical activation is done by potassium hydroxide or sodium hydroxide or zinc chloride or phosphoric acid at relatively higher temperature. So these are the two promising steps for activated carbon preparation for supercapacitor application. In our group, we have explored different opportunities, particularly for supercapacitor application. Here we started with straw carbon. Straw carbon is a waste material in Punjab. Every year people will burn tons and tons of rice straw, and then they produce carbon dioxide. Instead of that, that could be used to convert into activated carbon and then used in supercapacitor applications. Similarly, some unique material like choya chunk, so that have a high protein. So when you carbonize this, naturally some nitrogen and sulfur may be included in the carbon matrix. So that will also introduce some pseudo capacitance without any metal oxide decoration. So the carbon itself can have EDLC, also some pseudo capacitance. So that could be used for supercapacitor applications. So similarly, the corn carb have been converted into activated carbon by having KOH treatment. I just simply show you one example how the KOH treatment works. Okay, so this is a scanning electron microscopic image of the corn carb derived carbonized carbon. You could see there is a 20 micron size crystal, very big crystal. Whereas when you treat with KOH during activation, it makes a lot of puncture on this, or it makes some holes on this. So obviously we produce high surface area carbon. So these pores can easily allow the electrolyte to penetrate into this, since we have both microporous as well as the mesoporous, also some amount of macroporosity. So combination of these micropores, mesopores and macropores is very essential for high performance supercapacitor activity. The fabrication is very simple. So particularly when you use aqueous based electrolyte, you need not to go for any globe box or any dry room facilities, not at all required. Simply you can make a carbon powder with some kind of powder like organic binder like PTFE or PVDF. You can end up with some kind of paste. This could be pasted on some aluminum foil or some SS foil. Then you cut it into two pieces of equal weight. One will be your anode material, other one will be your cathode material. Basically, you use a cyclic voltammetry, that is a 3 electrode system for the performance measurement, initial performance assessment. If it is passed through this characterization, then you can go for a 2 electrode system. That is, one is a positive, the other one is a negative. In between, you can have some small filter paper soaked with some sodium chloride solution or potassium hydroxide solution, so that act as a supercapacitor. So here I will show you very small thin device. Here you could see this image. There are 3 or 4 devices are connected. So here you could see this is a small device. So this is a carbon plate. One side the plate we have coated this carbon. The other side also we have coated, and in between we kept some solid gel electrolyte, PVA sulfuric acid or PVA KOH gel electrolyte that could be clipped. Then you can end up with a device. Since each device can go 1.6 voltage, if you want to go for 3 volt or 9 volt or 12 volt, then you should connect 3 or 4 devices in series. Okay. For example, for just by 30 seconds charging, you could be able to light up these LEDs for 1 minute or 2 minutes without much issues. Not only that, these devices are highly flexible and bendable. You can bend it at any angle, like starting from 0 degree to 150 degree, you can bend like anything. So you still, if you see the cyclic voltammetry performance, still it is a stable system. So this is a very thin, and then when you fold it, it looks like this. So when you open it, it looks like this. So even if you bend it in different angle and then measure it, the performance are very similar. So wherever the flexible electronics requirement, so these supercapacitors also can be used. So I'm sure that a lot of healthcare monitoring systems comes with a flexible and bendable and stretchable devices. For that, for powering, these supercapacitors can be used. So here to summarize and then show you the performance of the different activated carbon, we have put various parameters. So these are 4 different carbons derived from different sources. This is a pore volume, this is a pore radius, this is a surface area, this is a performance. Here you see the performance, this surface area is very high for this carbon, but the performance is very poor. Not I cannot say it's a poor, but it's very low when compared to this. So even this 800 meters squared per gram carbon shows reasonably good performance. This why I am showing this slide is here the surface area alone doesn't matter. What kind of functionalities on the carbon surface, how the pores are this, how the conductivity of the carbon is also matters for supercapacitor application. As I told you here one is here what we have seen is how you can tune this. Now I show you how you can change the voltage of the system. Here we use, as I told you earlier, we use different asymmetric system. One side you have a pure activated carbon. This is on negative side. In the positive side, I have reduced the graphene oxide containing some metal oxide. In this case, cobalt oxide decorated graphene sheets. It was used as a positive electrode. And then this pure activated carbon prepared from the biomaterial used as a negative electrode. So now I have asymmetric system. Since both the electrodes are different, I should call it as a asymmetric system. So as I told you earlier, we use different publication you could see here. So this system can be used for your some of the reference. So we use asymmetric system like this. So we fabricated a small device like this over nickel foam. So this is one nickel foam. This is another nickel foam. This nickel foam is coated with a carbon. This nickel foam is coated with a cobalt oxide decorated reduced graphene oxide. So this one device. So this is one single device. Like this, there are 4 or 5 devices has been fabricated. If you connect 2 devices, this can be used to light up LEDs. So this device is completely made up with aqueous electrolyte. That means it's 1 molar sodium chloride solution or 1 molar sulfuric acid solution or 1 molar KOH solution. So because of this aqueous based device, I cannot go beyond 1.6 or 1.7 volt. Okay. So since it is aqueous based system, also the safety of the system is also very high. So the same one we have made it in the high surface, large area where we made a 5 centimeter squared electrodes. So this like this we coated several electrodes. So in one cell there are 6 or 7 plates are parallelly connected. So this has one device. So like this there are 6 devices has been connected in a series, so that the potential of the device can be increases. When you connect this device as like in parallel mode, you can increase the energy. When you connect this device in parallel in series mode, you can increase the voltage. So that's what we have seen here. So this could see this is this capacitance is 2.4 farad at a 10 milliampere. This could be increased to 16 farad where 6 cells are connected. So this device has totally stored energy of 30 milliwatt hour, and the voltage is 9.6 volt. Why 9.6 volt? Since most of our application we need minimum 9 volt battery. The prime idea is to replace the 9 volt battery to with supercapacitor. So that's why we demonstrated this supercapacitor with a 9.6 volt. So this is again another capacitor, supercapacitor fabrication process where the activated carbon is taken. We made a 4-meter tape with the 10 centimeters wide width, and almost we use 1.4 milligram per centimeter square. So this is a coating thickness, and then we put in between on filter paper, and then these two electrodes are rolled up like this. So this entire system put into a small scan your body spray like this. So then we connected this. So we can able to have 45 farad. Since we use only one electrode, we use non-aqueous electrolyte, and then we can go up to 2.7 volt. For safety reasons, I restricted up to 2.2 voltage. So this is another device which we have fabricated in our laboratory very recently, where you could see this is a 18 farad capacitance with a 2.5 volt. But if you see the entire length of the device is only 23 mm, that is a 2.3 centimeter height. The width is also 18 mm only, that is 1.8 centimeters. So like this device, very tiny device could be made. So these devices can be used for store up lighting the LEDs. I'll check whether my video works are here. So this devices has 18 farad or 9 farad, depending on the whether it's one side coated or double side coated electrodes. So which can go up to 2.5 voltage. The stored energy in the system is 15 milliwatt hour. You could see the previous one is very large one, where you could have only 30 milliwatt hour. Okay, whereas here very tiny device, which can store half of this energy in this device. I'm sorry, this video is also not working. I'll try to find out if something is available in my pen drive. So basically, if you charge this device for 30 seconds, you can light up these LEDs for more than an hour. I'm talking about 1 hour, you can light up these LEDs by having 30 seconds or 1 minute of these devices. So we are now planning to combine these devices with the batteries. We are working with people working on lithium-ion batteries. So we are trying to integrate this device and have a hybrid device very soon. I think this is for just comparison of our device. So this is a Maxwell is one of the supercapacitor fabrication. Anyway, recently this was this company was absorbed by Tesla. So no, hereafter you may not have Maxwell, but so far until last year, Maxwell is the leading people for fabrication of supercapacitors. So they are fabricating different kind of capacitors starting from 25 farad, 50 farad, 150 farad. If you see there for 25 farad capacitors, they use 7.5 grams of active material. For 50 farad material, they use 13 grams of materials. If you see the stored energy in this case, they have used 0.0025. That means 25 milliwatt hour. In our case, we have 30 milliwatt hour and 15 milliwatt hour. For example, in the case of 45 farad and 18 farad capacitors we have fabricated. In the case of 45 farad, we use only 5.6. If you see there, if you compare with their 50 farad capacitors, they are using 13 grams. We use only half of that or less than half of that. But our capacitance is 45 farad. In the case of 25 farad capacitors, if you compare with 18 farad capacitors, they use 7.5 grams, whereas we use only 1.3 grams or 1/4 of only we have used it. So if you see the energy density, stored energy density, ours is 0.0273 watt hour and 1.1015 watt hour. It's very close to their energy storage capability. So this shows the carbon which you have fabricated is much superior than what their electrode materials. Now we are making this carbon in kilogram scale synthesis, since some of the material will be better when you do it in a 10 or 20 gram scale. But when you do it in 2 or 3 kilogram scale or in tons of production, then the performance will be very lower. Actually, this carbon we are making, now we are making whatever I have shown, now we are making it in 2 kilogram scale. The activities is the fabricated capacitors are made up of with 2 kilograms scale prepared carbon materials. Now we are working with the industry to scale up this carbon production for commercial applications. Hopefully, we'll end up with some commercial product very soon. So the conclusion is very green and environmental friendly energy production as well as energy storage is possible in coming days, so that we have completely environmental friendly energy storage systems. I also take this opportunity to thank our director, CSA Sikri, for the opportunities. Also, some of my students, particularly Dr. K. Subramani and Mr. M. Karnan, for their valuable contribution to this supercapacitors. Of course, some of the BTech students, Mr. Sudan and Kausik, also part of this. In addition to this, I also thank sincerely to the funding agencies like CSIR and SCRB and DST and DRDO, and some of the private companies called Applied Materials for their generous funding. Without their support, it's very difficult to run the lab. Once again, I thank you all for your patiently listening the talk. If you have any doubt, I'm very happy to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Satish, for the wonderful lecture. It was very informative. You have started your lecture with dealing with the fundamentals and basics of nanomaterial, then energy storage device. But the highlight of the lecture for me was you explaining the difference between supercapacitor and batteries using the picture of athletes. So that was very quite good explanation of the difference between the supercapacitors and batteries. So overall, it was a very useful and very informative lecture from you. Thank you. I thank you for that. And I think we should open for question and answer session. If participants have any question, they can ask. They can unmute themselves and ask.
Hope my voice was somehow it's okay, right? It's not so bad.
Yeah, it was okay. In between, there was a little problem just for say 30 or 40 seconds, but it was okay at overall.
Yeah. Okay.
So any questions?
Sir, this is Sharma from Matrishika. Sir, one question, sir.
Yes.
Is there any possibility of combination of these supercapacitors, capacitors, and batteries like that, sir? Because each one has one its advantages, disadvantages. Can we have combination of these things?
Yes. Now, as I told
in an application?
Yes. Now people are now
switching over from one to another.
Yeah. Now people are working on hybrid system. One is having internally some capacitor electrode. The other one is battery electrode. So then they will combine the system itself. The other one is we can have batteries separately, supercapacitor separately. So you have integration. Basically, the electronic circuits will do the job. So now they are also having, they are developing, even our lab is developing some electronic circuits. So whenever you start your engine, the energy will be taken from your supercapacitors. Since when you start the engine, you need peak electricity. So when you try to take that electricity from your batteries, the battery will get failure very quickly. So during that time, the electricity will be taken from your supercapacitors. Then once you start it, the vehicle run with your batteries. After when batteries, when the vehicle runs with the batteries, in case of any overload, then the extra energy will be taken from your supercapacitors. Okay, so that's why people are now designing. Actually, we are also now developing a system like that. So to demonstrate on the roads. Yes, of course, this is actually very excellent question. So people are working on it, and then some of the car companies are already implemented this technology.
Okay. Sir, we have one question in chat box from Vinod Kumar. He is asking, sir, I have one doubt whether we have only vegetable material or we can use animal waste, sir, use of capacitor.
Yeah, it's another good question. It's okay. This may be interesting for many people. It can be anything. Okay, since anything you burn up finally will end up with carbon material. But only thing is, it should be reproducible and it should be able to done in tons of material. There are n number of materials has been reported even from vegetables waste as well as small raw grains or very rare materials of a particular country of origin. Okay. Only thing is for R&D applications or some reporting to for some publication, it may be okay. But for reality, it is very difficult to have such kind of system. Of course, there are few promising wastes as like the rice straw or corn cob. Also, in addition to this, some vegetable waste, which are in tons of waste every year or every day, could be used. I don't know how many of you are aware. Right now, the activated carbon which we are using our batteries manufacturing comes from our coconut shell. Okay. Even the coconut shell prepared from Philippines or coconut shell from comes from the Kerala or Tamil Nadu from our Andhra have different properties. So right now the commercial carbons people are telling that only Philippines derive coconut shell derived carbon only having very high quality. Of course, this is available in tons of waste. Okay. So now that could be used as a value added product. Like this, any material can be used. But animal waste, I don't think so. Since for curiosity we can do, but for bulk production or commercialization, it is not possible.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is one more question. How to produce graphene sheets?
Yeah, graphene sheets as of now, people are trying to exfoliate from graphite, either chemical exfoliation or some physical treatment. Of course, some PVD, CVD methods also has been demonstrated, but unfortunately, we cannot make it in large quantity in any of these techniques except the chemical activation process. So I can say the challenge is still open. If you could able to find out a suitable method for the graphene preparation without much defects and without restacking. I hope graphene sheets in the sense only few monolayers or one or two layers may be acceptable. In such a case, definitely you will be the next Bill Gates. Other than that, now we don't have any route for production of tons and tons of graphene of what we are talking about the quality. People are claiming that they can able to make a huge amount of graphene, but that is not equivalent to what we have talking about it.
Okay. Sir, there is another question from Suraj. Can you please give some inputs on what preliminary study is required to decide if other animal plant debris can be used or not?
Now, maybe what you can do is you can get the carbon powder out of it. Okay. You can go for simple TGA measurements, whether see how much amount of carbon is there. Since some of the material will have more ash content. Okay. Also, there may be a chance for metal impurities. So that kind of metal impurities should be removed by washing or treating with the KOH. If you have pure carbon, it doesn't matter where it comes from, whether it comes from the animal or it's a plant, doesn't matter for battery application or supercapacitor application. You can go for, if you have a carbon on your hand, you can go for a simple cyclic voltammetry technique to check how the electrochemical properties. Very simple cyclic voltammetry. Then you can decide whether it is good for supercapacitors or batteries by comparing with the literature material. Then you can simply run with one cyclic voltammetry, then you can decide it.
Okay. Any more questions? If you have any more question, you can unmute and ask, or you can type in chat box. Okay, I think there are no more questions, sir. So let me end this session by thanking you once again for agreeing to deliver a lecture in our FDP. And it was a very informative and very good lecture. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you all, and then also for the organizer and Pawan sir and other colleagues for giving the opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you. So there is an announcement for the participants. The next lecture, which was going to start at 1:30, will actually start at 2 o'clock. Okay, it is being delayed by half an hour so that you can all have lunch and take some rest and then come back. Okay, so I'll see you at 2 o'clock. You can use the same link to join. So I'll end the meeting here. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.